On my very first night in the apartment, the knocking started. 3 sharp knocks, a pause, then 3 more. I froze in the middle of unpacking a box, a roll of packing tape still dangling from my fingers. For a moment, I thought I imagined it. Old buildings make strange noises. Pipes groan, floors creak, walls settle. But 10 minutes later, it came again. 3 knocks, pause, 3 knocks. Slow, intentional. Not plumbing, not coincidence. I stepped closer to the wall and pressed my ear against the cool paint. The sound had come from the neighboring apartment, the one belonging to the elderly woman I had only glimpsed once while moving in. Small, bent with age, leaning heavily on a cane. "Hello?" I knocked gently in return. "Is everything okay?" Silence. I shrugged it off. Probably nothing. But the next evening, at exactly 9 o'clock, the knocking returned. 3, pause, 3. And then again the next night. Every night. Always at 9. I had moved there after my divorce. 38 years old, starting life over from scratch in a small rented 1-bedroom on the edge of the city. The building was old but sturdy, the kind with thin walls and long memories. My ex-husband kept the house. It had belonged to his parents, and I didn't have the energy left to fight for it. I packed my boxes, took the cat, and walked away. Remote work made the loneliness louder. I edited articles for an online magazine, spending my days tapping at a keyboard and drinking too much coffee, while my orange tabby Jasper ruled the windowsill like a quiet king. The neighbors were mostly strangers. On my right lived a young couple who alternated between shouting matches and passionate reconciliations at 2 in the morning. On my left, the old woman. I didn't know her name then, only her knocking. 3, pause, 3. After a week, it began to irritate me. 9 o'clock would approach and I'd find myself bracing for it. Bang, bang, bang. I'd lose my train of thought mid-sentence, fingers hovering above the keyboard. "What is she doing over there?" I muttered once to Jasper. "Hanging pictures every night?" Jasper blinked slowly, offering no theories. I tried knocking back, louder this time. "Do you need help?" I called through the wall. "Are you okay?" Nothing. Another night, I walked into the hallway and rang her doorbell. No answer. Yet I could see light glowing beneath the door. By the 10th day, curiosity pushed me into our building's group chat. "Does anyone know the woman in apartment 3B?" I typed. "There's knocking every night. Just wondering if everything's all right." The replies came quickly. "That's Mrs. Lydia. Been living alone for decades. Quiet. She's over 80, I think. Barely leaves the building. Maybe she can't hear well?" No one knew why she knocked. Soon the sound became part of my routine, like a clock marking the end of the day. But once, late at night, I heard something different. Soft crying. I stood frozen in my kitchen, a mug halfway to my lips. A frail voice drifted through the wall, barely audible. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." A chill crept up my arms. I considered knocking again, but hesitated. What if she was confused? What if she didn't want anyone to know she was crying? Fear, or maybe uncertainty, held me back. The next morning, I ran into her on the stairs. She was climbing slowly, gripping the railing with both hands, breathing hard. "Good morning," I said gently. "Would you like some help?" She startled, as if I had caught her doing something wrong. "No, thank you," she whispered. "I can manage." Her eyes darted away quickly. There was something there, not annoyance, not anger, fear, or maybe shame. I couldn't quite tell. 2 weeks later, the knocking stopped. The first night I didn't notice, headphones on, deadline looming. The second night, I glanced at the clock. 9:05. Silence. By the third night, unease settled deep in my chest. I pressed my ear to the wall. Nothing. No footsteps, no television, no knocking. Just stillness. I stepped into the hallway and rang her bell. Once, twice, 3 times. No answer. "Mrs. Lydia?" I called softly. "Are you there?" The hallway swallowed my voice. Downstairs, the building manager shook her head when I asked if she'd seen her. "Not in a few days," she said. Why? She usually knocks on the wall every night, but now it's quiet. The manager frowned. Maybe she went to stay with family? At her age? We exchanged a look neither of us liked. You might want to call for a wellness check, she suggested. Back upstairs, I tried to convince myself everything was fine. But that night, something woke me. A faint scraping sound behind the wall, like someone dragging a foot across the floor. Then, a dull thud. My heart began pounding. "Mrs. Lydia?" I whispered. The sound stopped. Silence stretched so long I wondered if I'd dreamed it. Then, barely audible, "Help." Ice flooded my veins. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. "I think my neighbor is hurt," I said, forcing the words out. "She's asking for help but won't answer the door." Police and paramedics arrived within minutes. They knocked, announced themselves, waited. Nothing. Finally, the officer sighed. "We're going to have to force it." The old lock gave way easily. Inside, the air smelled stale, medicine, dust, something sour. And there she was, curled on the hallway floor like a fallen bird, her cane just out of reach. A paramedic knelt beside her. "How long have you been down?" 3 days, she whispered. "Why didn't you call anyone?" "I did. I knocked." Her watery eyes found mine. "I'm sorry. I didn't want to bother anyone." My chest tightened painfully. "You were knocking for help?" I asked. She nodded. At the hospital, they confirmed a fractured hip, severe dehydration, and exhaustion. Later, while an officer secured her apartment, I noticed photographs lining a small table. A young woman holding a baby. The same woman years later with a teenage boy. Then a graduation photo, a smiling 18-year-old. Her son, the officer said quietly, died about 10 years ago. Overdose. She never recovered. The happiness in the early photos made the emptiness afterward almost unbearable to see. "Some older folks do that," the officer added gently as we headed out. "Knock on walls just to hear someone knock back. Proof that life is still nearby, that they're not completely alone." The words stayed with me long after I returned home. That night, I cried with Jasper curled against me. I visited her the next morning. She looked impossibly small in the hospital bed, sunlight pooling softly around her. "You're my neighbor," she murmured when she recognized me. "My name is Erin," I said, sitting beside her. "Lydia," she replied faintly. "Thank you for calling." "I'm sorry I didn't understand sooner," I admitted. "I thought you were just making noise." She gave a fragile smile. "I know. I tried not to bother anyone. But it's frightening, being alone. When you knock and someone answers, even through a wall, it feels like you still belong to the world." I swallowed hard. "Why didn't you ask for help?" She turned toward the window. "I've always taken care of myself. Asking felt shameful. Falling and not being able to get up." Her voice trembled. "After my son died, some days I didn't mind the thought of going with him. But then I'd hear you moving around, talking to your cat, playing music, and I'd think, life is still happening next door. I should hold on." I reached for her hand, thin, cool, but steady in mine. "Please keep holding on," I whispered. She squeezed my fingers. 3 months later, I helped her back into the building after rehab. "Thank you, dear," she said as we climbed slowly. From that day forward, we made a simple agreement. No more knocking. She would call. And she did. Every evening I stopped by with groceries or soup. Sometimes we cooked together. Sometimes we just drank tea and watched old detective shows. She told me stories about her son, how brilliant he was, how kind, how she tried to save him. "I always wonder if I missed something," she confessed once. "If I could have loved him better." "You loved him," I said softly. "Sometimes love can't fight every battle." She nodded, tears shining but unshed. The knocking never returned. Now, when my phone rings and her gentle voice says, "Erin, are you busy? Come have tea," I don't hesitate. 6 months have passed. She walks slowly but steadily, cane tapping rhythmically beside her. Sometimes she looks at me and says, "Thank you for hearing me." And I always answer, "Thank you for knocking." Because loneliness isn't simply being alone. It's calling out and believing no one is listening. Mrs. Lydia knocked for weeks before I truly heard her. Now I understand. Behind every wall is someone's life, someone's sorrow, someone quietly asking not to be forgotten. All we have to do is listen.